What you waiting on?
This is Christiana Woods, and she's interviewing Mr. J.D. Woods Jr., her father, on January 28, 1986. How long have you lived in the Katy area?
I was born here in 1938.
And how long have you been involved with rice farming?
Grew up on the farm, so I've been around it all my life. Didn't actually start farming on my own until 1964. And at that point in time, I was sharecropping with my father.
Were many people in your family also rice farmers?
Oh, most of the kinfolks were on the Wood side. B. Ray Woods, Chester Jordan, Richard Woods.
What generation of farmers are you?
Well, I'd be second generation.
Okay. Were there many people living in Katy area when you were rice farming?
Katy had a population of about 1,500 people when I started. Of course, I'm still farming.
Yeah. What do you think the percentage of farmers was when you first got underway with your rice farming around Katy?
Well, rice farming, along with the Exxon refinery, were the two major industries here. And rice farming probably accounted for maybe 300 farmers, and the employees and all of the staff that went with it probably made up half the community.
And so what do you think the percentage is now?
Well, it's very small. Probably no more than 1%.
Has rice farming technology progressed much since you've been farming?
Yes. It's been dramatic. Changes in machinery, and methods, and the varieties have changed in a great number of ways since I started in 1964.
How much equipment did you start off with?
Oh, we had 4 or 5 tractors. They were all very small, usually had horsepower somewhere around 60 or 70. Some of the tractors we use today go as high as 475 horsepower. The combines were usually 12 foot in width. They might harvest 5 to 10 acres a day. Combines we have today are 24 feet wide and can harvest up to 100 acres a day.
How much the amount of machinery that you start off with, how does that compare to what you have today, though?
Oh, it's very small because we were only farming about 500 acres. As the farm size grew, or the size of the machinery grew, we're able to do the same job much faster today because the machines are larger, more efficient.
About how much acreage do you farm now?
In rice, we farmed somewhere around 2,000 acres here at Katy, and about 2,000 to 2,500 in North Louisiana.
Does your rice farm in Katy, is it bordered by other farmers in the community, or is it?
In some places we're bordered by other rice farms, and some places we're bordered by now different types of development.
Were these developments rice farms once upon a time?
Sure. Everything was farmed here at one time, except the woodland, and most of these have been turned into either subdivisions or shopping centers, locations for light industry.
Who do you consider to be like founding fathers of rice farming in Katy, or would you know of any?
Well, sure, I know them. They are members of several families that have been in rice farming. The Woods family is just one of them. Cardiff family is certainly one of the major ones. There was the Longenball family that was in farming. The Jordans. Could go on and on. one time there was probably 100 different families involved in rice farming at Katy.
About how many of those families do you think are still involved today, and which ones?
Probably about a dozen. Woods family is still involved to some extent. Cardiff family. Third generation Cardiffs are farming. And we have just a few sprinkled here and there from the other families that were in farming.
What obstacles did you run into when you first began?
Well, like a beginner in any business, I had a lot to learn. I had been around rice farming all my life, but being around it and actually knowing how are two different things. So, learning the techniques, learning how to operate machinery, learning how to repair machinery, learning how to manage men, learning how to keep records, managing money, all of that were things that I had to learn. A major obstacle would be basically just lack of experience.
Okay, and when you gain more experience, what new obstacles would you run into?
Rice farming has changed, and the demands are certainly greater. The weather has always been there, and we have learned to manage around the weather, so I wouldn't say that it was a major obstacle. Problem today is that the cost of farming has escalated at a much faster pace than the price of what we're selling. So the farmers have found themselves caught in a cost-price squeeze where it's almost impossible to make a profit.
Can you kind of elaborate, if possible, on the processes of farming rice and how they've changed over the years?
When I started farming, we only harvested one crop, and today we have a volunteer or a second crop. So one way we've gone from 1 to 2 harvests. We have learned through better methods, ways to have a better stand of rice, and what I mean by that is you have a more uniform crop that comes up and it's even. We've learned a little bit about managing our water. We've learned a lot about leveling our land to get rid of all the contour levees. We've learned through the use of herbicides to control grass.
Well, what did you do about these things before you had herbicides and ways of leveling the land?
We did the best with what we had, and you could farm in those days and still make a profit with a very or relatively low yield. For example, in the early days, if you made 3,000 pounds to an acre, it was still possible to make a profit. Today we make 8,000 pounds to the acre and lose money.
How many different kinds of rice were there farmed here?
Well, there's probably been a dozen varieties in my 20 years, or 22 years. We have seen our rice researchers breed new varieties that are short, that can stand the wind of a thunderstorm, even stand the wind of a hurricane. What do you do when the farming year is not what you had expected? In what way? You mean financially or weather-wise or what?
Well, in general, could you relate on past experiences, like if maybe the weather wasn't up to par, or maybe financially the markets weren't playing you a good hand, so to say.
Okay. In farming, you have to be willing to take risk, and everything that you do is at risk because the weather is very unpredictable, and obviously we can't control the weather. We also can't control the price of our commodity. We're at the mercy of the world market. We've been at the mercy recently of high energy costs, the mercy of high interest rates, and all of these have gone together to put most of the farmers out of business. I can remember just in 5 years how a rice farmers meeting has changed from one where there might be 150 people there to 200 farmers. Today there's probably no more than 20, 25 farmers left in Katy.
Taking you back just a bit here, do you have any specific memories about days on the farm? Maybe when you first had started, or maybe even when you were much younger and not, into the farming business yet.
Well, sure. I've got lots of memories that go back to the early years, and I virtually did all of the jobs on the farm. If there was a tractor that needed to be driven, well, that's what I did. If one needed to be repaired, I did what I could to fix it. If rice needed to be watered, well, that's what I did. The work required me taking a shovel in the field and cutting levees and draining water by hand. That's what I did, because we didn't have backhoes and those sort of things when I started. And I have lots of memories of when I was out in the field doing all of the jobs that have to be done to grow a crop of rice. That has gradually changed as the farm grew from 500 acres to 5 times that size. I had to become a manager, and I couldn't stop to drive a tractor or combine or to do handwork with the shovel. There was always things to see about to stay ahead of the crew. And as the years have gone by, I gradually moved from the field to the office.
What troubles have you had from maybe neighbors around fields and stuff? Have you ever had any complaints or anything?
Yes, not many, because we try to be very, very aware and conscious of those that are around us. As the development has come and as the homes have been built, we have had to change a lot of our farming plans. In fact, we have even abandoned certain fields or tracts of land because they were too close to the population. And we feared problems, and with the press and everyone being kind of chemical happy and lawsuit happy, we have to be very, very careful that we don't do anything that's unlawful or use anything that's harmful to people. There are regulations, and we do our very best to follow those regulations. I've had a few complaints. I can't say that there was anything that comes to mind that was really a legitimate complaint. Most complaints come from the fears of uninformed people that think that we're using insecticides or pesticides that might be hazardous to health. As a matter of fact, I don't use pesticides on rice. I use herbicides to control grass. And I use fertilizer to stimulate growth. Sometimes we use a fungicide, which is something that just kills disease in rice, but none of these really are toxic to humans.
So in other words, they really have no probable cause of worry, other than the fact that they're just unaware of what's being put on the rice and possibly in their backyard or something.
Yeah, I'd say 99% of the time that's true.
Well, are there any traditions or anything that you observe during the year, perhaps like around harvest or something?
Well, planting time and harvest time are special times to the farmer. I think they symbolize a lot of things. Planting time is a time for beginning. It's a time for new growth. It's a fresh start. It's a second chance. It symbolizes a lot of things, and there's lots of traditions around planting. Around harvest time, it likewise has lots of significance in that as you move into harvest, you go to take accounting, so to speak, of your year's work. At harvest time, you bring in what you have sown, you harvest what you have sown, and that can be good, it can be not so good. So it's kind of like a report card time. It's the time of accounting, time of taking stock. It's a time that can bring a great deal of satisfaction. It's a time that can be disappointing. You can be sure that if you're in agriculture for any period of time, that agriculture will break your heart sooner or later.
Well, what about any special celebrations? Do you have anything to celebrate the new planting or the final harvest?
Oh, sure. We always have a good party in the crew whenever we finish planting, and we have a big party after harvest, and just kind of celebrate, let everybody unwind, and enjoy the fact that we have accomplished what we set out to do. There's always rice festivals, there's harvest balls and things that take place in different parts of the rice belt.
Are these something that are newer to the community, or have they carried on a tradition for a while?
Well, the Katy Rice Festival, for example, is relatively new. Rice farming's been here for 75 years probably, and the festival maybe 5 or 10.
How do you think the citizens of Katy regarded the local farmers a few or even many years ago?
Well, the farmer was in a different position then. I think the farmer probably had more respect in the community. He usually was the one that he was the one that was involved in if not the major industry, one of the major industries in town. A lot revolved around the rice farming and harvest time and planting time. And the local merchants depended on the farmers because that's where most of their business came from. Not only those that sold the supplies that farmers needed, but farmers buy clothes, and farmers buy groceries, and farmers buy cars, and all of those kind of things really depended on the rice crop. So to go from that to where we are today is a very major change, because today the farmer is almost insignificant around Katy, and it is a major change. Most of the residents that live in Katy come from some other area and probably have never seen a rice farm or a rice farmer.
What difference do you see? Do you see any signs of perhaps even disrespect for the farmer these days?
Oh, sure, it's everywhere, and again, that's primarily a misconception by the public. We as farmers have to take the blame for not bringing our circumstance, our case, our story to the public. We are perceived to be, in some cases, people that are outgrowing something that is in surplus. We're growing something that's not needed. Our nation is blessed with more food than we can eat. And so the farmers are just something that have to be tolerated by so many people, and a lot of folks think food comes from the grocery store. They don't realize that you have to have farms and you have to have farmers. And so I think that partly because we get busy doing our thing and we go about our business every day farming and taking care of what we have to do, we don't take time to see that the general public understands the problems that we have, or understands the different pressures that we're under, and therefore we are perceived by the public to be just on government relief through farm programs, and really just something else that they as taxpayers have to carry.
Well, do you think that farming will continue in years to come in Katy?
No, it won't continue for too much longer because rice fields will be covered with concrete.
How long do you think that will take?
That depends on what part of the area you look to. Naturally, anything that's along the interstate highway or the railroad or Highway 90 probably doesn't have very many years left. 5 years, 10 years max. You get back 4 or 5 miles away from the highways, you might see 10 to even 20 years before they're done. Now, that's assuming that the economics of rice farming are such that a farmer can stay in business. Now, if the economics stay like they are today, there won't be any rice farmers left anywhere in this nation.
Well, do you think that maybe once people realize that the farmers are dying out, so to speak, that maybe they'll have a little bit more respect for farmers in their plea, if you may?
No, I don't think it'll make a whole lot of difference to them if all the farmers go away. The only thing that will get their attention is if one day they go down to the grocery store and food has increased in price because there's not much of it left. And if we ever have food lines in this country like we had gas lines, then they'll probably miss the farmer a little bit. But until it really affects them, I don't think the public really cares.
A little off the subject here. What do you consider to have been maybe the most prosperous years of rice farming?
Oh, it's 1973. There was 1 year out of the 21 that I have farmed where food was short around the world because of weather, and all crops were in demand. Corn, wheat, soybeans, rice increased maybe 2 to 3-fold. And that was a year when we as farmers thought finally our day had come. It made us feel important, like the nation needed us. We had to grow food. Our government said, get out and plant fence row to fence row. We've got to feed the world. And we were encouraged, and away we went. And we did all that. And we did perform, and we produced a tremendous amount of food. And as soon as the scarcity was over, and as soon as the surplus began to build, all of a sudden farmers were not really needed anymore, and when the financial problems came along, farmers were then, I think, thought to be just a burden. Don't know how soon things will cycle again, but I think that eventually there will be so few farmers left in this country that we will have a shortage of food. I don't know how many years away it is, but I think it's coming.
Do you recall any setbacks or perhaps natural devastations through past years?
I've been through 2 or 3 hurricanes, but rice is a crop that tolerates weather better than any other crop that's grown in the state. And yes, we've been through good years like 73 where the price was high. We've been through years where the weather was yesterday where we had too much rain, not enough rain, and other than the effects of a major hurricane, not really anything else that can happen to life.
Do you think like you'd be able to pinpoint any particular lesser year or years, perhaps, either financially or weather-wise?
Oh, the worst years that we've had have been 1985, 1984, 1983, 1982, 1981. All of the 80s have been just hard. But farmers always believe that next year's going to be a good year. That's what keeps us going. You asked me if I can remember any years that were good. Well, yeah, I've had 2 good years, 1973 and next year.
Let's see. Could you perhaps give an example of a day in rice farming, perhaps like during harvest or something?
Okay. Harvest is in the summer. The days are long. Usually we start around 6 to 7 in the morning. Equipment has to be serviced. You're not able to harvest rice as long as there is dew on the rice. It has to be dry. Therefore, it's 11 o'clock, maybe noon, before the combines can start. So the morning is used to service and refuel and repair the equipment. Harvesting starts and runs until sunset, usually. In the summer, that means that your days will usually be about a 14 or 15-hour day.
With the new technology and specialization in machinery, do you think, have you ever had to perhaps harvest at night, perhaps with lights on the machinery itself?
It's very rare, but sometimes if the wind is high and the wind is from the north where the humidity is low, it's possible to harvest it. I remember before Hurricane Alicia. The wind was high, the hurricane was on its way, we still had crop in the field. We turned on the lights, the rice was still thrashing quite well, and we stayed in the field till about 2:30 in the morning. We went all day, we did not stop when it got dark, we just kept right on rolling. And we combined a tremendous amount of rice. As the storm approached the coast, began to mist, and of course as soon as the moisture got on the rice, that was the end.
And was that in 81 or 82?
I think 83, wasn't it?
83, okay. What did you do during the day? I mean, when would you take your lunch breaks or dinner breaks, or did you?
Most of the time during harvest you don't take a lunch break. If you're operating a piece of equipment, usually a sandwich or whatever it is that you have in the lunch box, it has to be eaten on the go. Eat with one hand, drive with the other. Maybe in some cases you might stop in the field to unload, and while the combine is unloading the rice on the truck or the cart, you might take that opportunity to eat.
Backing up the process a bit, what about planting? Is a tedious a process, or does it even take as long, or maybe longer?
It doesn't take as long because the machinery is larger and more efficient. But the basic technique of planting hasn't really changed that much. Katy, most of the seed is knifed into the ground by the use of a grain drill, we call it. And the seed is usually planted about an inch deep in the sandy soil that has moisture. The moisture will soak the seed and germinate.
Where do you see the rice technology going in the future?
Well, I'm president of the Texas Rice Research Foundation, and that's what we're involved with. New methods, new research is providing better ways to grow rice, more profitable ways to grow rice. Research is the key to the future, and research will give us ways that we can be more efficient, ways that we can lower our cost of production. There is a new area of research called genetic engineering. It's biotechnology. It's a method by which the genes in the plants are selected and new varieties come that are more disease resistant, more efficient, tolerant to herbicide. All of these type things are on the horizon. Research saved the rice industry in 1960 with the development of new varieties and grass controlling chemicals. We've had a major breakthrough in the 80s with the introduction of, again, new varieties that are semi-dwarfs that give us the ability to produce 40 or 50% more rice per acre. There are lots of chemicals on the market that have some promise. I think that research will dictate the way that we go in the farming business, and it is the only bright spot on the horizon.
You say that it saved it in 1960. What did it save it from?
Oh, financial disaster. We came through a war in the 40s where farmers were producing all they could to feed the world and the armies. Well, the 50s came along, and again, nice Republican president. We decided to get real conservative in the country, and he just about broke all the farmers. Prices dropped. They came in with programs. They reduced the acreage, and the 1950s were just horrible for farmers. At the end of the 50s, we came out with a new variety that had potential to produce much higher yields for the same cost. We had grass control, and that gave us much higher yield. The long and the short of it is the price of rice didn't go up any, but we were producing, instead of 3,000 pounds to the acre, all of a sudden we were producing 5,000 pounds. That made it profitable again. Same kind of thing that happened here. 2 years ago, we had gone from 5,000 pounds to around 7,000 pounds to the acre because of new varieties.
Do you think that this new technology that you were speaking of will see Katy before? Do you think that it will see Katy before perhaps the rice industry in Katy is phased out?
Oh, we may see some of it. Rice is moving to the Mississippi Delta because that's an area where water is more abundant, land is more fertile. And I think that the majority of rice is going to be grown in the Mississippi Delta in decades to come.
Do you think that this technology is affordable to the farmers, or is it something that maybe they'll have to invest risky amounts into?
The farmers are already investing money through the Rice Research Foundation into all types of research. We voluntarily give 1 nickel of each hundredweight of rice to research.
And how long have you been doing this?
Since 1982.
1982.
Prior to that, all the research was funded by USDA and the state.
How long has the research been going? Since 1960 or before?
No, research goes back beyond that. A new variety, you usually have to spend about 12 years. The Rice Research Foundation instigated a laboratory in Puerto Rico where you have year-round weather. that gives you the ability to grow 3 crops in 12 months instead of 1. So we can grow or develop a new variety down there in about 7 years. Through genetic engineering, it's possible to have a new variety in 2 years, maybe 3.
Are all of these new types of rice applicable to the Katy area, or are they designated for different areas of the country or world?
We breed rices for the Katy area, and we have bred rices that are for the Mississippi Delta. Texas, everything that we concentrate on is primarily for Texas and South Louisiana.
I'm just going to back up just a little bit here and go back to perhaps even before you were farming. What was it like to go out into the fields with Grandpa?
Oh, well, I grew up doing that, and that was lots of fun. I've got lots of fond memories, of being a kid. Of course, I was all big-eyed and impressed with the machinery and the men as they did the work. They were the grown-ups. They were kind of the heroes that we as little farm kids all learned to look up to. And being in the field, of course, with your father and with other men that operated big machinery made a tremendous impression on me as a kid.
Do you think this helped to give you, first-hand experience with learning how to farm rice, or were you there just speculating and watching?
Well, sure, being around it gives you a general sense as to what needs to happen to plant and grow and harvest a crop, but until you have actually been in the seat of a tractor or a combine, you can't begin to know how it feels to operate them.
Are there any experiences you want to relate, or can you think of that maybe you've had over the past years that are for some reason more memorable than others?
In the rice fields, is that what you mean?
In the rice fields, or perhaps even dealing with working in the dryers, or driving the machinery or anything.
I don't think of any one real significant event that comes to mind.
What about the dryers? I've realized those have changed the industry quite considerably.
Well, there were always rice dryers when I was about 3 or 4 years old. The first rice dryers were built, so I have very few memories of the days when they used binders, thrashing machines, and mules, and all that sort of stuff. That was certainly done here at Katy, but I was a little bit too young to remember very much of that. The dryers have changed to some extent, but there hasn't been any major change in the way that rice is handled and dried so that it can be sold.
Yeah, because I know that most of the dryers around the Katy area are the same ones that have been here since the first one was built. And have they had to make any improvements on them, or are they basically at a state in which their efficiency could not be improved much?
I'm sure that there could be some things done that are what I would call refinement. As far as major changes, there's not any that I know of.
Well, all in all, could you maybe just perhaps make a wrap-up statement to summarize your farming in Katy?
Sure, farming has changed dramatically, and it will continue to change. Farming in general, rice farming certainly being part of that, is under tremendous stress today. I can't predict exactly what the outcome will be. I can tell you that our goal is to develop the technology that will give us the ability to grow rice at the same level that the Thai farmer does in Thailand. He grows rice today for about $5 per hundredweight. Production cost in Texas was almost $12 4 years ago per hundredweight. Today it's about $8.50. That's mainly because of research. Our goal is by 1990 to be able to grow rice for $5.50 per hundredweight. We intend to be there through higher yields, through more efficient farming methods. It seems almost impossible to go from $12 to $5 in a decade, but that's where we need to go. Once we're to that point, we will be competitive around the world. The world prefers American rice. It's known for its quality. The Americans are dependable. We can be trusted. You can't say that about our competitors around the world. Some of our competition is famous for pricing rice, entering into a contract which they will break if the price of rice goes up. They are not dependable, and we have all of that on our side. If we can learn to grow the rice at or near the cost which the Thai farmer and some other Asian countries will face, there won't be any surpluses because the world will naturally buy our trade. That's where we need to get. We need to be to the point where we are not dependent upon government farm programs. And I'll make no bones about it. Government policies is what has wrecked the farm. Go back to Jimmy Carter with his dumb embargo. It didn't hurt Russia a bit, but broke about half the farmers. And you can go from there to other well-meaning politicians that have literally taken away the farmer's ability to earn a living. Policies that brought about a strong dollar made us non-competitive around the world. Policies that brought about high interest rates. Playing politics with our food to try to punish the world won't work. Politicians still try. It's a sad thing when we in this country have the ability to feed the world, and yet people starve every day. I would like to see this country, I'd like to see the rice farmers, specifically in this country, come to the point where we can produce rice at a profit, where we can earn a living like every other American, and at the same time make a big contribution towards feeding the world.
Well, thank you very much, and this was Christiana Woods interviewing Mr. J.D. Woods Jr. on January 28, 1986.